After the death of King James I, his son Charles I inherited the throne in England. Charles I stubbornly pursued his father's policy. When Parliament refused his request for funds, Charles dissolved the Parliament and ruled for 11 years without it at all. But later on, when things got really bad because of the war with France and Spain and the rebellion in Scotland, he realized that he needed support, so he had to summon the Parliament again. To summon the Parliament means to gather again the members of Parliament and grant them the power. But the Parliament forced Charles I to rule under their control. The House of Commons put forward the Petition of Rights in order to limit the power of the king. According to the Petition of Rights, there should be no imprisonment without cause shown, meaning that no person could be arrested just because the king ordered to put this person into prison. There should be no forced taxes imposed without parliamentary grant, so the parliament now was in control of new taxes and several other things. At first, Charles reluctantly accepted the new law and tried to rule England by it. But with the time, he started to rule by the idea of divine right again, just like his father, and this policy brought about an open conflict between the Parliament and the king. The supporters of the king were the members of the House of Lords, royal officers and landlords traditionally. They were known as royalists. Their opponents were the members of the House of Commons, townsmen and small landlords. These people, by their religion views, mostly were Puritans, so we can call them this. And also there was a huge contrast in the looks of the two opposing parties. Puritans had their hair cut close, their dresses were plain and dull in coloring, and that presented a huge contrast to the curled hair and brightly colored clothes of the royalists. So because of that, they got two nicknames: Cavaliers for royalists because they were so dressed up, and Roundheads for Puritans because of the traditional haircut typical for them. In 1642, the Civil War broke out, and at first the Royalists won a number of battles, but with the time it became clear that the Roundheads would defeat the king. The thing is that the king's army was unpaid, so it got disorganized and the soldiers started to run away even. But the Roundheads got their money from the rich merchants, and the army was headed by Oliver Cromwell, a gifted commander who made the Parliament army well trained and disciplined. Cromwell won several battles, and finally, in 1645, the decisive battle took place. In it, the Royalists were completely defeated, and Charles I was arrested and imprisoned. Two-thirds of the members of Parliament did not want to put the king on trial, but then they were removed by the army commanders who obeyed Oliver Cromwell in all instructions, and in 1649 Charles I was brought to the trial. Finally, he was found guilty of betraying his country, and he was beheaded because of that. But Charles accepted his death with such dignity and courage that at the time when the monarchy was restored in England, he was already regarded as a martyr and sympathized by many people. As you can see in the screen, the Civil War is also sometimes called the Puritan Revolution because mostly the king's opponents were Puritans, and the official dates, the traditional dates of the Civil War are 1642 to 1649, even though the final battle in fact happened in 1645. The thing is that England's future was only defined in 1649 with the death of King Charles I, so that's why most historians support this date. After the victory, Oliver Cromwell proclaimed himself to be Lord Protector, and England started to be called his Protectorate. That was the form of government that he created, replacing the monarchy. At first, Oliver Cromwell complied with the popular ideas of a ruler chosen by people, but quite soon he started to rule as a dictator. He dismissed the parliament, and his rule was authoritative and absolute, and his dictatorship was really hard on people. Oliver Cromwell was a Puritan and even a fanatic, I would say. So he put into action all of the rules that the Puritans chose for themselves. The Puritans wanted church and state to become one body, so he established the government of church. The Bible became the main book of the law. The church service was made simpler and shorter. Confession and music were eliminated, and even the architecture of churches was changed completely. There was no stained glass, no statues or beautifully decorated altars any longer. So, at the first glance, you could say that the Puritans' reforms were in action. Besides all that, the Puritans regarded pleasure to be sinful, and because of that, they closed theaters, banned sports and amusements, and even banned celebrations of Christmas and Easter. After the death of Oliver Cromwell, his son Richard Cromwell tried to carry on with his father's policy, but within a year he was forced to resign because the people just couldn't stand this dictatorship any longer, and the Houses of Parliament resumed their activity, and after that the Restoration happened. And in these two pictures you can see the king and Oliver Cromwell. Charles I is in the left picture and Oliver Cromwell is on the right.